you beautiful creatives. Today we are going to bring this adorable dog to life. It is the last part of this piece. So if you jump on over to my YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button, you could be sure to check out the last two videos where I worked on the pony and the horse. And now we're going to bring it all together. So for most of this piece, I'm going to use the angled tip. And I have the heat set for this one probably around a 3. I want to keep a lot of the shading in the dog pretty light, but of course I'm going to turn it up closer to a 5 or so when I start working on like the eyes, the nose, the things that I really want to darken and to pop. So I'm flipping it back and forth. I'm using the point of it and kind of creating some hair-like strokes throughout his face, and you know, it really starts to create the texture with a light burn. I'm pressing very gently. I'm using the low heat like I said, but going through and creating those hair-like strokes. Now to flip it back over and use the back side a little flatter, I can kind of tip it and lay it towards the edge, dragging it in towards the middle, and that just adds another layer of shading. Again, I always start out with a gentle touch and a lighter heat because I like to layer as I go in order to create the depth and the darkness and all the textures to my pieces. So don't crank it up too high, guys. Don't push too hard. You don't want to get such a dark burn right from the get-go that you can't go back and kind of fix it if you need to. So start out light and easy. So I'm, like I said, switching back and forth. You can see how I'm back to using the point, and then I go back to using the back flat side of it. I'm using the point to create the strokes of the actual hair, and then when I flip it over like this, I'm using the back side and I'm kind of moving it around, circular motions, kind of dragging from the outside in, and just creating some depth and some shading in there. Can you get a kind of a good look there? I know the angle is not always wonderful on these videos, guys, but when I try to angle my camera the other way, I tend to get my hands right in the way, and then you guys can't see anything I'm doing. So bear with me. So I try to explain the best I can so that you really get it. So just kind of going through the body, I've created throughout his face, throughout his ears, a lot of those hair strokes, and this throughout his body, I'm just creating a lot of shading and a lot of depth right now using the back side of the tip. And just kind of, like I said, moving it around in a circular motion. So when I jump into his face, I really want to start to create a little more depth. So I'm kind of drawing some lines with the very tip. I'm also kind of adding a little polka dotted effect, you can kind of say, around his lips, just to start to darken them without it being such a definite line right away. But around his eyes, I'm really trying to create more of a line effect. I'm going to go back in, obviously, and color those in, but I'm trying to create some lines around his eyes, like the bottom eyelid, the top eyelid, so that when I leave a little bit of space around there, a little bit of blank space, that highlights it and really starts to set out what you were trying to see in the eye, to kind of create the eye a little more realistic. So I'm going to jump on over to the other side and kind of create the same thing around the outside of the eye, really trying to just make it stand out from the rest. Now, this dog is actually a very light colored dog in life, you know, in all reality. So sometimes it's a little trickier when they have so much white on them and they're such a light color to get the definition and the different textures and things to stand out when you really don't want to go too dark because the dog is very light or a lot of white in there. So you can see I'm creating the depth and the darkness around the eyes. Now I haven't done the actual pupil yet, but you can see he's kind of got down in the corner of his eyes where the darkness kind of starts to run down towards his nose. So I've kind of pulled it down like that as well. Now I'm going to create a little depth around his nose. I'm kind of just very gently using the tip to kind of go around, create a little bit of line by kind of dotting and using a little stroke to go around the nose to start really creating that. I don't want to make it one solid piece. I'm going to have a little bit of highlights. I want you to be able to see that his nostrils have a little more depth to them. So that's why I'm kind of going in this way. Now using the back side, I'm just trying to pull from that outside edge that I've just created and pull down kind of towards the center. And again, creating those the nostrils a little different shade, creating a little darkness kind of up through the center and around the edges of his nose. Don't be afraid to spin your piece. Don't be afraid to move the wood where you need it to be. Get comfortable. Make sure your hands are in a comfortable, relaxed, state. You want to be able to reach all angles that you need to reach without really struggling. Because if you're uncomfortable and you're really trying to reach for something, you tend to not get the right angle and either go out of the lines you didn't want or, create something that you really didn't want to do there. So always just spin it around. Don't be afraid to spin it around and just be willing to make it work for you. Work smarter, not harder, guys, right? So, okay, back to the nose here. I am still going through, like I said, using the point to create that fine lined definition around the very edge of it and using the backside to create a little of the depth as I put it down and pull away. The same in the eye. Now I'm going back through and I'm creating his pupil. I want that to be pretty dark. I want that to stand out. However, I want to leave a little highlight in there. So I always like when you're working on eyes to leave a little white space. You want that little highlight as if the light was hitting the pupil to add a little realistic life to it. So I don't know how good of a look you guys can really see here. I'm trying to spin it and give you the best angle, but going through and just laying that backside and kind of pulling through as I leave the tiniest little white space as if the light is hitting it and creating that depth. I want the eyes to be really dark, to really stand out and add a lot of depth. Can you see that there? Just by really creating those textures in the nose and the eyes, can you tell how much more alive he just became? We're bringing this dog to life. So going down through the mouth area using the tip, I'm creating, kind of using almost like a dotted effect just to start to create some depth, some texture through his mouth and through those bottom parts of his little lips there, I guess I want to say. And just kind of almost in a triangular form from the center of the bottom part of his nose going down in kind of a triangular shape. I'm kind of going through with those little dots, lightly touching again, and just kind of creating that texture and that depth right down through there. And then flip it back over and kind of pulling over the same thing just to add another layer of shading, just to start to darken where I want to start to darken. As I go through this piece, I'm going to go back through and look at it and say, okay, I need a little more depth here. So I'm just going to pull a little more shading through. Or, you might need to turn the heat up slightly for a darker burn in certain areas when you want to just create a little more depth. But go slowly, guys. Go in layers. Can you see? Right here, you can see how I started to, through his ears there and his face, excuse me, hair-like strokes that I've created. And then by laying it flat, I'm going back over and creating that depth through his body and through his front leg there, even a little bit on his chest. I'm kind of just going through and creating a circular motion to add that depth. So we don't want him to just look like it's just flat on the board. So I'm going back through now and I'm creating some grass by using the same tip. I've cranked this heat up now to about a 6 because I want this to be dark. I want it to stand out against this light dog. So just by kind of not using the very tip, but kind of standing it up and using the tip and slight piece of the side. You can see maybe better angle here. I'm just creating grass-like strokes. And once I get the grass strokes up through there, I'm kind of going back through, laying it on its side, and just kind of creating like where the grass would come out of the ground. So it has given him depth, and it has kind of made him pop from the background. We don't want him to blend into the background. I will finish this piece with just a clear matte finish, so I want something to stand out where I'm not using stain. So I hope that you guys can see how he's really come to life. Now, I didn't video myself doing the background. We'll touch base on that in a future video, guys. Stay tuned to my YouTube channel for that. But here is the completed piece. Here is the background that I have added around some rocks, some texture, some trees, some broken branches around the pony, around the horse, and around the dog to really just bring them all together, bring them to life. To be able to put 3 animals into one piece that kind of look like they flow together. So I hope you enjoyed this. As always, I hope you enjoy all of my videos. Much love and appreciation. Have a beautiful day, my friends.